Candyman. This is for the time to spend. I know the baby yet there is checking for me. I guarantee it's not me, but the glory. Because I opened up and I've been seen in all of my glory. Because I opened up and I've been seen in all of my glory. So, and we get the stats to the ceiling. When you hear this, you be feeling my story. I used to only want the money, but now I'm coming for the glory. This is Mr. E, boss of the Southside Bosses here on Revolutionary Hour, baby. Podcast you can find on Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Deezer, and more, baby. You already know what it is. On Revolutionary Hour, we drop science for the melanated human being all over the planet. You heard me? And this is what it is.
BOSS Radio, Southside Bosses, its owners and associates take no responsibility for the opinions or statements made by the talk show host or their guests. Statements or show topics are not necessarily the beliefs of the site or the radio station, and opinions between talk show hosts may conflict. This site does not endorse anything as the truth. That you will have to judge for yourself. But we try to speak the truth on the owner's behalf and reserve the right to question the supposed truth. In this time of misinformation, government-controlled media, and government corruption, it is sometimes hard to get to the truth, but we must try. It is not our intention to libel, discriminate, make hate, or annoy anyone. We believe that it is our constitutional First Amendment right of free speech to voice our opinions and our duty to the Constitution and country to expose the truth. This site takes no responsibility for the opinions of others and the postings of comments in chat rooms or forum posts.
As Mr. Flavor, I am proud to bring to you Mr. E, the music maestro.
Yes, sir. I am back in the building for Revolutionary Hour. Like I said before, you can follow us on Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Deezer, or more. Please share us to all your family and friends because we got things to talk about, baby. And let's get it on. First, before we do get into it, I want to actually give you a little bit about who I am. Mr. E, boss of the Southside Bosses, but I was born Eric Williams in a little town in Florida to a grandfather that's a preacher who is a reverend. He had his own church for over 50 years. He dedicated his life to the Bible. And I grew up in a Christian Baptist home, more than likely. I mean, more than less, you know what I'm saying? But when I moved to Atlanta around right before my teenage years, I was bombarded with so much information that my perception on life was altered forever. I was hit with sciences when most of my life I was hit with religion. And this sounds like most Black people in the United States and across the African continent as well, our Caribbean. It seems like we are hit with a lot of what we would call religious propaganda and forced into a narrative that makes us less than who we really are. But this is the thing. The people who has forced that on us actually used our sciences that we established before they were even on this planet. And that's what I want to talk to you tonight about. Because it seems like when we talk about religion, Black people are the most religious people in the world. But do you really understand your religion? Because after studying so many different religions, trying to find my way back to the Most High, trying to get in the graces of God, because they said that's who was supposed to save us. It turns out that He had already given us everything that we needed to be saved. He, she, whoever. I believe it's a she. But that's my belief, and I ain't here to discuss beliefs. I'm here to discuss sciences. I'm not here to discuss religion. I'm here to discuss sciences. Because for some reason, we hear our own science, but we negate it. We neglect it. We dismiss it as if it has no bearing on society, when it is actually the standing points of society. So I want to start off by talking about something I heard KRS-One talk about some years ago when he was talking about Freemasonry. I'm not getting into all the secret societies and nothing like that, but the actual Masonry was actually utilized by our ancestors to impart knowledge down to the next generation. Take it. We all know masonry is pretty much the act of building. You know, we create the building blocks of society. We create the building blocks of culture. We create the building blocks of life. And in order to get that knowledge passed down to this generation, that we use their different crafts. And since at that time we was building a world because we had just came to this planet, we decided to use masonry or the act of building to teach the next generations how to be able to survive in this holocaustic world, because that's what it's turned into. So with that being said, think about everything that you have been taught in your life that was taught in the way of mysticism, spookism, and things of that nature. And ask yourself, could it have really happened? Now, I'm not saying that it never happened. I'm not saying it did happen. I'm saying to ask yourself that. Because there's a lot of things that we've been taught, but we've been taught it in the wrong way. We've been taught the truth through a lie. And if you tell the perfect lie with the truth, you would deceive a people forever. So I'm gonna just jump right on into it. First, let's talk about an old children's song that was actually a Freemasonry song. Most of you heard of this song before. A lot of y'all did. Hell, all of you have. Because I'm pretty sure in second and third grade they taught you this song. But all y'all remember the song, row, row, row your boat gently across the sea. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. How do y'all think that's just a song that was sung to children because it helped calm them, it helped put them to sleep or something like that, not realizing the reason why it was sung to children is because of the simple fact that it was teaching children building blocks of life. Now let me explain. Row, row, row your boat. Now what that insinuates is you're living your life. You are a boat. This is your boat and you're rowing it across the sea. Now, if you actually sat down and understood certain religious texts, which are really science books, like we'll use the Bible, for example. Every time they talk about sea, they talk about the people. It's a metaphor for the human race on this planet. So when you're in your boat, in your body, you're rowing across the sea. You're dealing with people on a daily basis. Not only is you dealing with the people on a daily basis, but think about it. Whenever you deal with people, you're more than likely dealing with people on a financial stage, right? So you're rowing your boat across a sea of currents or a currency. Now, the currency is actually dictated by the moon and the sun. And this is why the chemical properties or the chemical labels for the moon is the same as silver, and the chemical symbol for gold is the same as the sun. So we see that gold and silver helps you row your boat across the sea of people that you have to deal with on a daily basis. Don't you? Think about it. Look at us as black people in the United States. If you don't have money, you can't talk to us. Ain't that what these rap songs be saying? But this is far from where we were supposed to be in life, because that's why it goes on. They say, row, row, row your boat gently across the sea. Merrily, 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 merrily. Obviously, you doing it happily. That means you're not upset every time you spend your currency, every time you use your currency. You're happy. You're very happy. You know why? Because you're getting value for spending your currency. Life is but a dream. It's supposed to be all peace, love, truth, peace, justice, and freedom. Ain't that the dream? Ain't that the dream, to have all of that? Everybody wants every last one of that, but it's a dream. See, this is how life was supposed to be. But check this out. Life ain't like that for black people, and especially in all over the world. Because since they're not in their boat, they're not in their proper person, their proper persona, then they are not them. So they're not in their boat. They don't have an identity. So they can't row over the sea. because they can't even deal with people right. Think about it. We're so angry. We're so upset. We take things out on everybody else. We call, and then we blame them for things. No, yeah, they are. Don't get me wrong. These people are doing dirt out here, but we contribute to that dirt. We give them a reason to treat us like this now. Now, not back then, but now. With the Willie Lynch letter, the Jim Crow laws, the Christian black codes, they have transformed us from an industrious people to a destructive people. So now the sea of people in the world that isn't like us don't want to really deal with us unless it comes to that currency. But guess what? They're too busy stealing your currency. They're too busy stealing your energy. So since you're no longer in your own proper person and they are stealing your currency, guess what? You're drowning. Your whole society is drowning now. We don't understand the sciences. So without the sciences, how can we actually implement what we need to do in life? We can't even control our own finances. This is how they're stealing our currency and our energy. This is how they're keeping us stagnant. They're keeping us standing still. And everybody who knows anything about stagnant water means it goes stale. Water needs to move in order to stay fresh. It has to flow over rocks in order to be purified. And if it doesn't move, it doesn't flow. If it doesn't flow, it doesn't flow over rocks. If it doesn't flow over rocks, it's not purified. So yet now it's contaminated. That's the sea that they got us drowning in, because we're not in our proper person. So we're not rowing our boat, and we're not doing it gently across the sea, dealing with the sea of people on this earth. We're not merrily. And it's not a dream. This is a fucking nightmare. Straight like that. This is a nightmare that we are forced to live. Now, take that science and establish that with life, and you see that this was bigger than what we have been led to believe. This is why we established the sciences to know what we are to do in life. That's it. That's it. It's nothing more, nothing less. See, they told you all this spookism, and then they throw it at you in mysticism, saying that first thing they did was they took a book, the Helios Biblios, the book of the sun, and then they transformed it from a science book to a religious book. Then they gave you religion. And the way that they had to do is they had to take the science out of the book. But they can't take the science out of the book. This is why it says in Revelations that anyone who takes out of the book or add to the book, their portion will be taken away from in paradise or added to them in destruction. So what they did was they didn't take it from them. They rearranged it so that it would be misinterpreted, and then they taught the misinterpretation to us. So we think we're religious. So now we're in the Aquarius age, the age of awakening. And we are awakening. But guess what we're awakening to? We're awakening to the religion that they threw at us, but we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater when we throw out the Helios Biblios with Christianity. Now, what am I talking about? Okay. Yes, the one that they falsely called Jesus Christ was a real person. His name was Yehoshua ben Yosef. And he did teach. Guess what? If you read the Bible, because I know a lot of y'all don't. A lot of y'all, like I said, you throw the baby out with the bathwater, so you never even read the Bible. And if you read the Bible, you read it once, and then you only read it to try to find the discrepancies that was in the Bible, not thinking that, well, maybe these discrepancies exist because I don't really fully understand it. You are tying things together that don't need to be tied together. It needs to be flowed together. You think that this has something to do with that, and the wrong aspect of this having something to do with that. It doesn't. Now, let me explain. You say that when Cain killed Abel and was banished, how did he get married? Who did he marry? Well, first, let's break that down. If you look at Genesis chapter 1, we see the creation story, and we see that on the fifth day, the Most High God, he ended up making, and I'm not preaching to you, I'm just showing you the science of it. And I'm talking as the Most High God because that is the character of the Bible that we are referring to right now. So the Most High God, he decided to make animals on the 5th day. After that, he made man on the 6th day. This is why the 6th day to Muslims is holy. And when he did that, he didn't give man dominion over the animals because the animals was here first. Fast forward to Genesis chapter 2. They talk about Adam being created, and he saw that Adam was lonely. So the Most High God proceeded to create the beasts of the field, the fowl of the air, the fish of the sea. And he brought them to Adam to see where he would name them. But yet there was no mate found for him amongst all of the species that was brought to Adam. So he put Adam to sleep, took a rib, and created Eve. Now, first thing you're hearing is that, wait a minute, Genesis chapter 1, he created animals first and then he made man. But in 2, how did he go from creating man second to creating man first? He never said he created man first. He said he created Adam in chapter 2, meaning that Adam was not necessarily the first man on earth, but he was the first of his kind of man. And if you look at science go from Homo erectus to Homo sapien. So how do we know that man didn't go through all of those stages until they became a Homo sapien, which the first Homo sapien was deemed Adam? Now, again, this is just to get you to see that there's a different perception of the science book that has been thrown at us by our ancestors. Yes, our ancestors, because if you actually trace your lineage, you'll find out that, well, there is Cush and Ham, the Cushites of Africa and the Hamites of Africa. Yeah, we know that to be true. Well, that's exactly what it says in the Bible, that the Cushites came from Ham, right? The Israelites came from Shem. That's been deemed true. Now, we can get into Japheth being the white people and not Esau, not Edom. I don't know where y'all get that from. Y'all gotta study. Edom the white people didn't even exist when Edom got here. Or Esau, whatever you want to call them. Anyways, when you see that the Cushites actually inhabited the African continent, the Alkebulan continent that you think you know today, and then you hear that Ham had the north and Cush had the south. You don't stop to think that this father Ham and the son Cush had the African continent that you know today. And guess what Ham had? He was the father. He had the north part. He had the northwest part, which if you put all the continents together, that would turn out to be North America. I'm just saying. It's a science book. We just discussed geology. We just discussed genealogy. And we just discussed biology, all in a couple of chapters of the first book of the Bible. Goes on like that with the Quran. It goes on like that with the Book of Tao. It goes on like that with so many of these different religious books out there that they're demon religious, that we're not even seeing it, the science of it. So of course there was other human beings on this earth when Cain left Adam and Eve, and he snatched them up a wife. But how is that hard to understand? Now you see where the spookism goes away. Here's another one. The one that they call Jesus. They said that when he was born, he was being pursued by Pilate Pontius, right? So when his mom and dad decided that they needed to get out of Dodge, where did they go? They went to Egypt. You feel me? They went to Hukupta. You feel me? They went to Kemet. You feel me? And at that time, Kemet wasn't just that little area that you see on a map right now. No, Kemet was all of North Africa, and even some going into the so-called sub-Saharan Africa, because you got to remember the Sahara hardly actually existed up until a few thousand years ago, because it used to be a forest. That's what they don't tell you. The wilderness that the Israelites got lost in, leaving Egypt for 40 years, was part of the so-called Sahara forest. Now, knowing that, and then seeing how Joshua or Jesus went down to Kemet, he was there for 12 years. 12 years. No sign of him. Nobody knew anything about him. We didn't even hear about him anymore. So we already know that he couldn't have been any kind of a pale-skinned so-called Jew, because we know that the ancient Kemets were masterful, deep melanated people. Deep melanated. So we know this grain of salt didn't hide amongst all this pepper. That wouldn't even make sense, right? Well, it didn't. That's why you know he was a heavily melanated person as well. See how that science works right there? Now let me keep going. 12 years we don't hear from him. Then all of a sudden he pops back up when his mother and father comes to visit the temple. And in the temple, he's astonishing all the master teachers of the temple with all the knowledge he has. Well, where did he get this knowledge from? The same place Moshe, aka Moses, got his knowledge from, being raised in Hikupta, Kemet, or Egypt as well. You see where that knowledge is coming from? The two great saviors of the Bible both got their knowledge from Kemet. Both got their knowledge from Egypt, Hikupta. Both of them. So knowing this, we actually can see that the knowledge of the Israelites that's in the Bible originated in Egypt. There you go. So how can you sit here and say that Jesus was a fraud when he taught Kemetic knowledge to his people? How can you sit here and say that? You cannot sit here and say that with a straight face when he taught Egyptian knowledge to the Israelites. Moshe, aka Moses, and Yehoshua, aka Jesus. They both taught that knowledge to the Israelites. And the Israelites turned around and wrote the Helios Biblios. So that means there is nothing but Kemetic knowledge in the Helios Biblios. This was the knowledge of true, of good and evil that Joshua, that the Most High God didn't really want them to eat from, because they saw how the pharaohs called themselves the Most High God. But if you read Psalms 82:6, you'll see where it says that ye are all gods, for you are children of the Most High. But you shall die like men, and the princes that you are, because you thought you was higher than the supreme. And the supreme being don't have to necessarily be a god. It could be the universe. It could be an existential force. It could be Mother Nature. You cannot defeat either one of those. You cannot be greater than any one of those. You can only play your part in it, being the God that you were birthed to be. But if you knew you was God, that means nobody can control you. And if nobody can control you, you can't be a slave. And if you can't be a slave, you ain't making nobody no profit. You ain't making nobody no currency. You're not moving them forward while you're staying still. You're staying stagnant. You're not staying stagnant. You're growing. See how these sciences actually come across to you as misinterpretations of the Bible or the Quran. So you throw out religion and you throw out the science with it. Then you go and say, oh, well, I'm a Kemetic now, and then don't even understand the science behind the Cometians. How do you not understand the science behind our own ancestors when you say you're reading it? The reason why you don't understand it is because you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. This is why. And this is why Christians are even misled, because they aren't taught that Joshua, actually taught Egyptian knowledge. If that was given that piece of the puzzle, then it would all make sense. But they can't let it make sense. They got to keep you in the dark. As long as they keep you in the dark, you lost. You lost. There's nothing else that could be done. Absolutely nothing. So that's something you have to actually understand before you start tossing out the information that's being given to you. You don't even understand the information. I ran into so many Christians that have not even read the Bible. They have not even cracked that book open. I ran into some Muslims, not a lot, but I ran into some Muslims who have not fully understood the surahs of the Quran. I'm just calling it what it is. Now, how do I establish that the Quran and the Bible are one book? Well, you got to think about it. Where did they come from? They came from the same people. They came from the descendants of Abram, the Israelites and the Ishmaelites, who was given the same promise according to their book. They also got their knowledge from Kemet. How do I know this? Where did Muhammad go and study before he actually started preaching? Egypt. He studied with the Moors. He was a Moor. But we don't know this. So we don't put two and two together. And then you hear about the Moors, and then you instantly say, oh, they sold us into slavery. Man, everybody was selling. We were selling ourselves into slavery. The Moors were selling the Moors, and the Moors were selling Europeans. The Moors were selling everybody. It just wasn't the same type of slavery that you think about. Because you're so hard up on shadow slavery that you don't even understand how the world worked before. Whenever you owed somebody, you had to pay off that debt. If you couldn't pay it off in currency, you paid it off in energy. You gave them your energy through work. You would go and till their farm, things of that nature, in order to be able to see what exactly would pay off your debt to that person. That's it. So if you can understand that, then I guarantee you will see way more. Think about it. If it's just in that one little nursery rhyme, think about all our other nursery rhymes. Every last one of our other nursery rhymes would actually be broken down into Freemasonry, which is Freemasonry, which is the study of mother and son, which how we got onto this planet. Every man, every daughter, every son has a mother. Yes, every man also, and every son and daughter also has a father, but guess what? Well, we already know it's not necessarily guaranteed to know who the father is, because, well, love was established over time. It wasn't something that we dealt with when we first got to this planet. We were trying to procreate. That was the whole purpose of our existence, was to procreate. Think about what the Bible says. The Bible says, be fruitful and populate the earth. That was the first law. And you have to have God to tell us that. We already knew that. So by knowing that, we went forward. It was written on our heart. We didn't need a book to tell us that. We didn't need science to tell us that, even though it was a science. We knew it off. We knew we had to populate the earth. But now we got people that don't even want to do that. Had a long conversation with somebody on Facebook. Lord forbid I do that again. But they telling me that the world don't need our children. Nigga, are you stupid? We don't need some of these adults, but we need all these children. I'm sorry. That is not, matter of fact, we don't need you, because you obviously feel like your seed is inferior, and we don't need people raising inferior slaves. We need people raising superior beings that can actually make things move and keep us from being stagnant. And Black people in the United States are one of the most stagnant people in the world. How do I know this? Think about it. What is it? 1% of, Black people own 1% of the wealth, and been like that for over 100 years. Where are we going? And you keep saying, oh, it's because the white man keep bringing us down. Well, we came from a nation of gods. How the fuck did we keep getting knocked down? Because you have not harnessed your power. You can't harness your power because you're too busy drinking this fluoride water. You're too busy eating all of these contaminated foods that aren't even foods. It's food stuff. Y'all know what food stuff is, right? stuff that's like food, not actually food. Because if it was food, they would call it food and not food stuff. You get that? But you calcifying your pineal gland. You're not thinking. You're busting your fist against the wall. Why? Because you're stuck and it's frustrating and you don't have the answers because you don't know how to read. You just know how to pronunciate words and know how to put them in a sentence to get a simple idea across. But you don't know how to grasp the complexities of our sciences that we established on this plane of existence. This is why we would never get anywhere. And at this point, it's not the white people, it's us. It's us. And I can't even call it white people because guess what? I'm white. Oh, yeah, look at me. Yeah, no, I'm white because my family comes from North Africa, according to the U.S. political system. This is why I don't contribute to that race identity thing. Race identity did not exist until the hybrid Europeans started the slave trade. And they had to find some way to make us inhuman. So they made us a crayon. They called themselves a crayon, but they called themselves a good crayon. Why they called us the bad crayon. And we think, oh, our skin is darker than theirs, so of course we're black. Nigga, my shirt is black. My skin is brown. My eyes are brown with the white eye, with white around it. My hair is brown. I'm brown. I'm not black. I'm not white. I'm brown. So why would I establish a slave code for myself? Why would I allow myself to be called something my ancestors didn't even want to be called? We keep saying we don't want to be a nigger, but we'll be a Negro. What the fuck is the difference? Can somebody explain that to me? And don't be coming over here talking about the Naga and the Negus and all that stuff. That didn't have anything to do with why they call us a nigger. You think they would be calling us a nigger if we recognize that name? We recognize that word? Because you got to remember, they was calling us a nigger while we were learning English, meaning we still knew our language. So we would automatically, he's calling me a king. Why is he calling me a king? That does... if I'm a king, why am I changed? What's going on? I need to fight back. No, they can't be having that. So they called us an ignorant one. Why? Because we had no clue of what was going on. So stop being a nigger, stop being ignorant, and get the sciences that our ancestors left here for you so that you can save yourself. Because that's where Joshua came down. He didn't come down here to save you. He didn't. Paul told you that. The 13th apostle told you that. And then you let the hyper Europeans push that into your mind that he came to save us and all we have to do is just wait for him to come back. Guess what? He comes back every time a child is born because we're given that opportunity to save ourselves. He gave us all the knowledge, but they didn't put it in a book. They didn't need to. Why put it in a book? Why would he put it in a book when it's right there in front of your face? You're not black. That's the first thing. So they lying to you about who you are. If they lying to you about who you are, why would you even attempt to want to integrate with the liars? I'm not calling all white people or hybrid Europeans bad. No, but the royalty that leads them are bad. And it's more people that look like us that's working with them every day. Your preacher is working with them every day. They still got you calling them black. You got to remember during slave times, the preacher didn't want you to fight back. The preacher didn't want you to riot or to protest or do any of that. The preacher was sent in to calm you. The preacher was sent in to set you down and shut you up. What you think changed? You think this shit changed? No. Think about it. Every time there's a protest or something that's going on, they want you to march peacefully. What the? Ain't no nation on earth gained their freedom by marching peacefully. The fuck? How did singing hymns while they shooting us down? What kind of? No, that is not what Joshua came down here to teach us. He told us to deny the world, to fight against the world. And you think he told you to turn the other cheek. Not realizing what that even means. What you think it means? You think it means let them do it again? No. It means be strong enough to take any blow they throw at you. But you better be prepared to throw it back at them. See, the whole point of him dying on the cross was not to save us. His whole point of dying on the cross was to punish him for teaching us the sciences that we were supposed to already knew. And it came out of the law. Think about it. The 613 laws of the Old Testament, if you look at every other so-called religion, especially the laws of Ma'at, don't they mirror each other? Don't they mirror each other? That's because that's the knowledge that we was given in the first place. We just used it and corrupted ourselves. So Yahweh had to try again. He gave us like, hey, I ain't mess up, y'all messed up. I gave you the sciences. What happened? Mother Nature raised you. You from Mother Nature. You're from the earth. So how can you not understand how the earth works? How can you not have any kind of connection with the earth? When is the last time that you actually walked on the grass and just felt Mother Nature up under your feet? See, you're not grounded to Mother Nature anymore. They got you buying these Jordans, not realizing these Jordans has these thick ass soles that keep you disconnected from Mother Earth. Why you think in Jamaica and in Africa they wear sandals a lot? Why you think the Israelites? Why you think Joshua wore sandals? To stay grounded with the earth, to stay grounded with Mother. Because that's why he said, who is my mother and father? Whenever they said that the mother and his mother and father was coming up. Mother and brothers was coming up to see him. Who is my mother and brothers? And people who follow the word that I'm preaching is my mothers and brothers. Why is that? Because we stay grounded to Mother Nature. So we're family. Point plain and simple. Point plain and simple. Just take the mysticism out, take the spookism out, and understand the words that are actually coming at you. Because a lot of us, we look at the Bible and we read the Bible through our eyes of what we see out of this world. Can't do that. You have to look at the words that in the way that the writer was writing it. This is why it's great to understand Hebrew or Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, Arabic, definitely Arabic. And it's because when you understand these languages, and you understand, I'm gonna give you a good example. Everybody got this notion that the Virgin Mary had never had sex before she had Jesus. You know that's a lie, right? Guess Jesus had an older brother. His name was James. So is the Bible wrong? No. Go look up the definition of the Greek word virgin for the Hebrew word virgin. You'll find out that it actually means a woman of childbearing age. Has nothing to do with whether they had sex before or not. All it is a woman who can bear a child. That is the definition of a virgin. So when you read it in the definition of a virgin of today, you say, oh, it was a miraculous birth because she didn't have sex to have. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. But she wasn't supposed to have children. This is what the issue was. She was another Sarai, but she had her children. She needed James. You know why she needed James? The same way that John the Baptist had to come before Jesus, James had to be here after Jesus so that he can continue to preach. That's why if you read the book of James, you would see him come back. Well, it wasn't even the book. It wasn't even James that wrote that. It turns out it was one of his followers that wrote that. One of his close followers that wrote that when they was going into exile. And they wrote, Faith without works is dead. Guess who was preaching that all you need is faith? The 13th apostle named Paul. Why do I keep calling him 13th apostle? Because if we read Acts chapter 2, you'll find out that Matthias was actually the one that replaced Judas Iscariot, the one that killed himself over a couple of pieces of silver because he snitched on Jesus. That was the 12th apostle. So who the fuck is Paul, the 13th apostle? Now let's break that down into science. 13 in Kemetic science meant evil. 13 in Hebrew meant evil. So why were we listening to an evil apostle? Not only an evil apostle, but one that was a Roman citizen. He was already a traitor. But yet we're supposed to just believe that all of a sudden he had this vision, he was blinded. We're supposed to believe him. We're supposed to just have faith that this happened. When we already seen all the miracles with Joshua. Why? And how will we get those miracles going again? We already seen those miracles. Why would we need him to experience another miracle to prove to us that he can't? No, he was killing the Hebrews. He was killing the Hebrews, hunting them down and murdering them. And then he decided with the Roman rulers that he was going to come in peace and act like he was an apostle and then teach. This is what Peter and James talked about. They said, do not listen to the wicked one. They weren't talking about Satan, which in Hebrew only means the enemy. It ain't even Lucifer. Lucifer ain't even the devil. Look at how many times they write the devil in the Bible. And not only that, look at the devil when he tempts Jesus. The word devil is in a small d. Not like that. Small d, not a big D. Yeah, you get the joke. But it's real. Look it up. The devil is written with a small d, not a big D. So if you actually understand that, you understand that this ain't even a person. This ain't even, because every person starts off with a capital letter. The devil here was used in a lowercase letter, meaning that it was simply an adjective, not a noun. So when the devil tempted him, the devil was temptation. Point plain and simple. Temptation is the devil. Have you never heard of that? Well, it's been science for too long, and we've been saying it for too long for us not to understand it. We talk in these connotative linguistics instead of denotative linguistics, and then we act like we don't understand what we're talking about because we are not speaking words. We're not speaking an actual language. We're using the dumbest language in the history of mankind, for one, English, and trying to explain everything, the sciences of the universe, with the dumbest language of all time. Why do you think the hybrid Europeans use Latin in law and in medicine? Because you can't describe that without that language. This is why it's so-called dead language, because the Romans still use that language. And the Romans is our Satan, or our Satan, the adversary, the enemy. But yet we still continue to this day to fall victim to the Roman Spanish Inquisition. See how it's all turned political? Because politics is a science, political science. We've always known this. Always known this. But yet now we keep denying it. Talk about we know so much, acting like we victims. We're not victims. We've been victimized, but we're no longer victims. Because we have been released from that victimhood and been given a chance to establish our nation again. But instead, we continue to be slaves to the United States Corporation and the Roman Couriers. The Rome. That's it. So we have to understand this. Without understanding this, we do not have any conception of real life. We'll never be able to experience real life. We used to freely move across all the waters. We used to freely move across all the lands. Now we can't even go over to the next city because guess what? We're not allowed to drive unless you have a driver's license, giving up your right to travel, giving up your right to do as you please, as long as you do not disrupt any person or their property, because that's the true crime. There is no crime unless there's a victim or damage to property, but yet we're getting victimized because they saying we created a crime, but there's no one to accuse us. The state of Texas is not a person that can come into the courtroom and say, that's the person right there, Your Honor. That's the person that did me wrong. That's the person that victimized me. That's the person that destroyed my property. No, you ain't got that. So how do we establish real law? That's where jurisprudence come in, the science of law. Do you see how science is everywhere? Science is everywhere, but yet we refuse to accept it. We think it's the Europeans. We think it's the hybrid Europeans. We think it's the Iberians, because that's what they were. They was from Iberia. We don't even know that. We don't even know how they came into existence, do we? Simple science. It's called adaptation. That's it. It's called adaptation. They adapted. When they had no sun, I've talked about this plenty of times before, excuse me. When they have no sun, the melanin that's in our skin, it decided to do what it needed to do in order to make sure that they survived. Hair got longer to cover the back of their neck so that it could keep the neck warm, so that the sensors that go from the brain to the body was still able to flow. The nose got slimmer so that it can warm the air up as it goes to the lungs, so that the lungs don't constrict. Because if you notice, when you get cold, look, men, when your balls get cold, it constricts, right? Think of it like that. They got hair all over their skin because they had to stay warm. They had to stay warm. That was the only way they could survive. And so much, their teeth went to fangs and stuff like that. Look at their teeth, because they had to eat raw meat. They couldn't cook it. We didn't eat meat. No, we didn't eat meat. That's why our teeth are flat. We ate fruits and vegetables, nuts and berries, fish. That's what we ate. We didn't need sharp fangs for that. But this is why you have some hyper-Europeans that look like wolves. And this is where the idea of werewolves came from. Men who were like wolves, hairy like wolves, fangs like wolves, and they ate meat. They ate people. This is where it came from. But until we understand this science, we're always going to be victims. Always. And it's sad. It's very sad, because we don't deserve to be victims anymore. But yet we keep victimizing ourselves. We keep victimizing us. And I'm always going to get called a coon because I'm not black. I'm always going to get called a coon because the United States government wants me to be white. I can't be none of that. I can only be who I am. I can only be who my ancestors made me to be. I can only be what my ancestors were. And they weren't black. Not one of them. They weren't white. Not one of them. It was all different hues of brown. Because guess what? Red is a variation of brown, which brings me back to Esau, who was born with red hair all over his body, and he was a red baby, and la 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 la. He wasn't white. He wasn't pale. He wasn't pink. He was red, which is a variation of brown. Pink is a variation of white red. If he was pink, he would have been pink. They would say he was pink. They didn't say he was pink. They say he was red. He wasn't the father of the hybrid Europeans. Stop saying that. That was Japheth. He is the one that moved to the Caspian Sea and the Caucasus Mountains. And it says right there in the Bible. Look it up. Establish the sciences that were given to us. Know them. When you know them, you do them. When you know better, you do better. But I just hope that we stop ignoring or refusing our own sciences. Stop looking at things in a religious aspect. Yahweh never created it. The Mother Nature, the universe, never created religion. No. Mother Nature, the universe, the creator, whoever put us here, they did it through science. We understood this world through sciences that we established on this planet and in the stars. Astrology, astronomy, that tells you enough right there. We knew how to moor across the waters, but we never once wanted to go underneath them. Why not? Why not? See, we got to understand that. And when you do, I guarantee you, this world is going to look so much better. It's going to come at you and it's going to open itself up. And then you're going to extract what you want out of it and manifest your own destiny. Create your own experiences in life. Because there's something else after this. We all know this. We don't remember what it is because we don't know the sciences. But anyways, this is your boy, Mr. E, boss of the Southside Bosses. I'm glad y'all decided to join me. And I hope y'all got something from this. And please stop throwing the baby out with the bathwater and understand the sciences that our ancestors gave us. Stop thinking that this is something that is either this or that. It's not either this or that. It's all together. Everything works together because everything is a big science. So I hope y'all got something out of it. I hope you liked it. Hit like on this episode. Hit that share button on this episode. Hit that follow button on our podcast, Revolutionary Hour, on Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon MP3, Deezer, and more. And let's start making some actual changes, because we ain't seen changes in over 100 years. We've been doing bad for over almost 1,000 years. Excuse me, almost 700 years. It's time that we start actually making some progress. Already, your boy, Mr. E, and we out. But before we go out, I'm going to go ahead and let y'all hear a little bit of music from your boy after a word from one of our sponsors. You heard me?
Feel the best you and save with any of our skincare sets. With either soap and oil or soap and butter, or a combination of all three. Heal your skin and keep it with the shine and healthy enough to withstand the sun. No matter what your skin needs, Southside Beauty Care will continue to help you through those rough patches of skin to the smoothness of butter dripping off of your body. Mix and match until you find a skincare regimen that's tailored to your skin and designed to obtain perfection. Come to Southside Beauty Care and see what we have designed specifically for you.
When they say more money, more problems, I'm thinking I don't got an option. I'm working on fixing my conscience. I'm taking no stress from no nonsense. I'm finding some peace when the meds came. I'm finding some peace when the chance came. I'm a provider, that's the best thing. I do it for y'all, that's a mad thing. Yeah, do it for y'all, that's a mad thing. I stay on my job, that's a mad thing. Give it to them hard, that's a mad thing. I step on these tracks, that's a mad thing. I puff on these tracks, that's a mad thing. Ain't no going back, that's a mad thing. We all staying strapped, that's a mad thing.
What's the current situation, war, obliteration? Studies in the projects started us racing. Kissing up the game like we about to hit a base. Like a money, cause we have to show them what they really facing. Invest in a motherfucking best. We about to go to war with it, never gonna rest. I know there's no peace in the streets of America, land where the dark people stress. Oh yeah, let's bring them face to the time that we hang. I can see the pain in the eyes of the brain. Fuel my fire like a kerosene blaze. When I learn about you, everything the words I'm saying. My ancestors did that, then I can do this. They believe proof this. Niggas on his own shit. Taking my heritage and flirt with that melody, so your motherfucker better cease in the city. All these down here for a little while, home went through a diamond by a couple times. I'll go get a smile if you out with the movement. I bleed for my people every inch, every mile. Fly away, don't like what I say. I'm coming from mine, and you all gonna pay. I can see you afraid, but it's funny, niggas and I'm you that you probably yesterday. Okay, I do it for my people, not equal, we're original. That'll make sense, but you motherfuckers copy style. I can break it down like a motherfucking pound. Never rhyme if you really wanna get it right now. I do it for my people.
I'm working on fixing my curse. I'm taking no shots from no one. I'm finding some peace when the man's carrying. I'm finding some peace when the chance came. I'm a provider, that's the best thing. I do it for y'all, that's the bad thing. Yeah, do it for y'all, that's the bad thing. I stay on my job, that's the last thing. Give it to them, that's the last thing. I stack on these racks, that's the last thing. I put on these tracks, that's the last thing. Ain't no going back, that's the last thing. We gon' stay in shape, that's the last thing.
Hey, watch you treating the killer, I said it's all. Making faces like a nigga, the best is too damn tall. Put a nigga in the cross, and that's what's called love. You bust up at the job, the cycle is not long. Trying to mention prison, I'm living that year so long. You see the blade killing, they the people with a call. It's over, but no one is left living and all. We so decent, as a top chill around, kill a man. This world crumbling like Mary Jane, just to keep my focus clear while I'm driving the left lane. One straight lane, but it's over damn pain in the past. But another brain is different from the pain. This ain't for only excuse, this is how they made me. There's 6 people in my head and they all hate me. I'm like, oh, you motherfuckers can't take me. Feel everything I live is the truth, you can't break me. So my ass, you listen to my spirit. If you hear it, it's enough to make you feel my fucking spirit. My life is like a bunch of never be the one to steer it. Fighting for my people and everything to be clear. Watch you from us if you know we fed up. You really gonna hit us when we get our head up. That's it, like man, yeah, patient and trying to make the dollar really see the secret.
When they say more money, more problems, I'm thinking I don't got a house. I'm working on fixing my guns. I'm taking no shots from no one. I'm finding some peace when the man's carrying. I'm finding some peace when the chance came. I'm a provider, that's the best thing. I do it for y'all, that's the bad thing. Yeah, do it for y'all, that's the bad thing. I stay on my job, that's the last thing. Give it to them, that's the last thing. I stack on these racks, that's the last thing. I puff on these tracks, that's the last thing. Ain't no going back, that's the last thing. We all stay strapped, that's the last thing.